Hello. Yes, we're live from my garden. Look what a beautiful weather it is. We literally fell from winter with frosty temperatures, 10 centimeters of snow behind me in the garden, still on Monday, into spring. Today, sun is out. All the snow melted away yesterday in no time, and it is roughly 12 or 13 degrees outside or something. So I decided to do this episode live from the garden, which I hope, if the weather permitted, weather permitting, to do many more weeks to come this year. Because I'm outside, if you're watching, can you quickly post maybe a comment if the audio is okay? It should be okay. I hear it fine, but if not, let me know in the comments. I should be able to see them all the way through this episode. So welcome in my garden for the 7th episode of Spilling the Green Beans, where I share with you my green secrets to inspire you to start growing your own vegetables. I'm your host, Emily. Dipti, hello. Thank you for commenting loud and clear. Good, that's nice. I am your host, Emily, and I'm the creator of Easy Urban Gardening, the system for growing your own vegetables on a balcony or terrace in town. You can see it behind me. Thank you for spending time with me today. Growing vegetables can seem daunting and hard work, but I share with you my green secrets, the most crucial techniques to make it fun and easy. And you'll also learn how to take advantage of all the broad benefits, health benefits of gardening, and how to cook delicious meals with your homegrown vegetables. I am spilling the green beans. So one of the crucial things to avoid overwhelm and disappointment when you're gardening, especially as a beginning gardener, is making a good plan. And as early spring is not really gardening season yet, this episode is all about why and how to plan your garden. So let's start with, why should you make a garden plan when growing vegetables? It's mainly because it prevents you from many common mistakes. And if you want to know more about those mistakes, look in the library on my YouTube channel. One of the previous episodes was about exactly those most made beginner mistakes. So you can avoid many of those, by making a plan. So you might now ask yourself, okay, so why and which mistakes? Although the previous episode goes on deeper, I'm going to break a few of them down for you in this episode as well, and then especially the ones that are very related to a good plan. So, a plan prevents overwhelm, chaos, unproductive gardens, and food waste. So, first of all, a plan gives you kind of like a guidance during the whole season. And what you do is kind of like mapping out which vegetables you want to grow, how much per vegetable you want to get. So kind of like mapping out, how much do I want to harvest from that specific vegetable? And then also, of course, when you should sow and how long it takes to grow those vegetables. And yes, when you have a plan, a garden is much easier and more fun, preventing overwhelm. People often associate with gardening, like the continuous hard work or kind of like almost chorus type of tasks to do in a garden. You get rid of those, most of them. So second of all, a plan gives structure. In the end, you know beforehand what to sow, but also when to sow. As in a good plan, you really map out the sowing locations. So it is, not only mapping out, okay, how much am I going to get? It's also mapping out where am I going to sow what? And in that way, you can take full advantage of the space you have. Then third, making full use of the space you have makes your garden most productive. Which means that your plan actually prevents unintended empty squares in your garden. And as we all know, an empty square won't give yield. So that is just wasted space. We want our garden, of course, to be super productive with big yields on as little space as possible. And this is where a plan makes a huge difference. And then finally, what I mentioned last is a topic very, very close to my heart, and that is food waste. Do you have any idea how much food is wasted in your country? If the answer now is no, I would suggest just go and Google a little bit, do a bit of research, because you might be shocked. I did this research last year for Switzerland, where I am living, and I can tell you I was shocked. There is 2.6 million tons of food wasted every year in Switzerland. Just try to imagine that. It's horrible. And maybe just as bad is that 1 million tons of that food waste is produced by households like yours and mine. Putting that in perspective for you to kind of like grasp it a little bit more, this actually means that in Switzerland, every single person wastes 300 kilos per year. So that's 300 kilos or 660 pounds per person per year. Shocking, no? Well, I was shocked when I read that, I can tell you. And maybe the worst of worst things around this topic of food waste is that 2/3 of that is very avoidable. It is just not paying attention, just not having a plan. Even if you're just shopping, you need to have a plan to avoid chucking all that perfect, good produce in the bin because you actually let it go to waste. So gardening is a very good way to avoid food waste because you are harvesting from your garden what you're going to eat that night. And the tendency of over harvesting is way smaller than the tendency of over shopping. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing, if you garden and you have a plan, you're even preventing food waste, preventing food waste. Oh, that didn't really sound good. So if you have a plan, the food waste that you produce in a year would go even down from a gardener compared to a gardener without a plan. Let's put it that way. And why is that? Well, gardeners are very, very susceptible to sowing way too much. So without a plan, it is very, very easy to grow too much and then end up wasting perfectly good produce. And I remember, and probably many of you can kind of like remember too, when I was a child, the vegetable garden of my, well, especially the one of my grandmother, but even the one of my parents, did always peak in a few vegetables Eek! No, it didn't end, Deepti. Thank you for commenting. I lost my internet connection. Am I back for you too? I mean, on my screen, I am back. Well, that's kind of the life thing. Things happen. It would be great if you would let me know if I am back. For me, it looks like the video is running again. So I hope it is. I just lost my internet connection. I think that is something that more people kind of experience nowadays. Internet looked very, very stable and good when I was working alone from home. But with the whole neighborhood working from home, it's not as stable anymore. So, but it looks like we are back on. So, sorry for that, but let's go back. I was talking about the vegetable garden of especially the one from my grandmother, but also the one from my parents, kind of like having this harvest peak at one moment for a very few types of vegetables, so only a few different ones. And then we would end up eating lettuce or, for instance, beans or beetroots for weeks. And sometimes it really felt like weeks with no end, you know, or every time again, it was beans or lettuce or whatever it was at that in that season. Luckily, my mom had a huge, huge social circle. So she was able to give away all our surplus. But you can imagine many gardeners ending up having too much of one kind of vegetables will just throw it away. And that is horrible. I think that is horrible because it's perfectly good produce and you're just tucking it away because you don't feel like eating it anymore. You had enough from those beans or that lettuce. And instead, you should have made a plan to know exactly how your harvest would play out in the season. Of course, there is no exact science when it comes to gardening, but you can make a very, very good estimated guess on how things will turn out. So let's look back at our plan given food waste. With a good plan, you map out which vegetables you want to harvest, but above all, you create kind of like a very clear overview for yourself as to when you will get how much veggies. And in that way, you can schedule your harvest and prevent surpluses. It has all to do with how much time does a vegetable take to ripen. And that is the way you kind of like map out the weeks between sowing and harvesting. And then you make kind of like an estimated guess on how long you will be able to harvest from that square. What do I mean with that? Well, you have to look a little bit. If you sow carrots, they will all be ripe roughly around the same time. Of course, a few days in between, but still you end up with harvesting those carrots in a relatively short period of time. On the contrary, tomatoes, of course, once they go in your garden and start giving fruits, they will give you fruits for multiple weeks. So it's not like, oh, I have tomatoes. Now I harvest all my tomatoes and then the plant is gone from my garden. No, you will start harvesting your tomatoes, probably maybe the first ripe one somewhere in July, and then you can harvest tomatoes depending on the weather and where you live. But I harvest tomatoes until sometimes even till end of September or into the first week of October. So, well, say hi. That's also another new but thing that you will probably experience multiple times the coming weeks if you are a regular viewer. That is Aramis. That is my Dutch herder. He's 2 now. And he loves being with me in the garden. So he will probably join in the videos more, not only today, but you will see him more often. Yes. So back to last but not least, a few words about how to make a good garden plan. The first step is to make a garden map. So in case of an easy urban garden, of course, what we are always talking about, so that is always what I envision when I'm talking about a garden. You can see mine behind me over there. You can see it, you know, and I mean, if you follow me also on Facebook or Instagram, you have multiple chances of finding pictures of how a garden, how an easy urban garden looks like. But this means if you you take a few sheets of paper and you draw your gardens. So that is, and then divide them in the amount of squares you have. So when you're just beginning, by the way, it is best to take 2 or 3 sheets per garden. But say you have an easy urban garden like mine, a standard one of 120 by 60 centimeters, and that garden has 8 squares. So you would draw, for that one garden, you would draw 3 rectangles of 4 by 2 equally big squares. And then next to the rectangles, you write spring, summer, and autumn. So that's why I want you to draw 3 of them. And then based on the ideal sowing time and the plant size according to the easy urban gardening system, you can now fill in the vegetables amount per square. So let me talk you through an example. The first rectangle for spring can, as an example, it can host 16 radishes, 16 carrots, 9 spinach, 4 pak choi, 4 Swiss chard, 1 palm tree kale, 8 peas, and 9 rocket. So, of course, we will always sow again immediately after we harvest it. So the second rectangle for summer will be time-wise, of course, it will kind of like differ. But after the first one, when you have harvested the spring veggies, the summer rectangle can host, for example, 9 lambs lettuce after the radishes, 9 beetroots after the carrots, 9 French beans after the spinach, 9 borlotti beans after the pak choi, 4 kohlrabi after the chard, 1 tomato after the palm tree kale, 2 cucumbers after the peas, and 4 potatoes after the rocket. And this exercise can then be done again for the autumn rectangle, of course, going back to the more cold weather vegetables after you have harvested the real summer veggies. So it is, of course, it's kind of like a little bit of a puzzle with all the seed packages and figuring out when to sow them and how long it takes them from sowing to when you can harvest them. It is always a little bit puzzling, but it is the way to sow and plant your garden 3 times. And along the way, you keep overview, you maximize your productivity, you're maximizing the variety, and you are pacing your harvest. So a good plan has 2 dimensions. One, you plan the amount of harvest per square, and you plan the sowing timely over the weeks and months during the season. So now you kind of know why I always tell my clients, take your time to make a good plan. Don't rush it, take it serious, and spend some time to it. And actually, that shouldn't be that difficult, as of course you make a plan before the season starts. So you can't do anything in the garden yet anyways, or hardly anything. And it also kind of like gets the gardening vibes really flowing, as it also is the ideal time to browse around in all those beautiful gardening catalogs and see what new varieties are available, and maybe even what new veggies you can try that year. So it is done roughly around this time of year. Like, early February is a really good time to make a plan. And then you slowly go into preparing your garden for the new season, which in the most areas of Europe won't be before March anyways, besides the fact that with Easy Urban Gardening, it actually doesn't really matter when you start. I extended my garden from 1 to 4 gardens during shortly after I fell ill, to provide myself with the freshest vegetables available while going through chemotherapy. And that was actually in September. So I started those gardens fresh end of August, early September, and I still had really, really nice yield during autumn and in early winter. So there is absolutely no excuse that before you sow those first seeds, to sit down and to make a plan, make a good plan. But if planning a garden is really new to you, or you tried it, didn't really work out, and still find it sound difficult or overwhelming, you are in for a treat, because you can now get all the help you can imagine. I am offering my brand new planning course this year absolutely for free, and you can still apply. It's a 4 weeks online course in which you learn all about which seeds to choose best, how to sow your first vegetables, when to sow, how to set up your garden, look for the best location, the best size for you and your personal situation. We will also talk about local circumstances, how to deal with those, about materials, and you will end up building a small, or actually designing, building, and planning a small but super productive vegetable garden. So if you want 100% fresh, organic, super tasty, homegrown vegetables, creating your own personal balcony paradise while maximizing your time use, your minimal space, realizing big yields, this course is ideal for you. And it is absolutely doesn't matter whether you are a gardening newbie, maybe started a little bit but haven't found your feet yet, or you already have a bit more experience. Everybody will find information to apply to their situation, and finally figure out how to really plan a garden. And if you are interested, you find all the information to apply for this free course in the show notes, and of course on all Emily's Easy Urban Gardening Facebook, Instagram pages, YouTube, LinkedIn, whatever social media you can imagine. It's always either Emily's Easy Urban Gardening or just Easy Urban Gardening, depending, of course, on what was possible on the different platforms. So go check it out, apply, join me for 4 weeks in my garden, building, designing, planning your garden, so that we can meet in each other's balcony paradise in a few weeks and spend wonderful time outdoors. We start on Monday, 22 February, and I am very much looking forward to see you all inside. For now, I want to thank you for spending time with me in the garden, and hope to meet you soon in your garden. Did you enjoy this episode of Spilling the Green Beans? Please share, give a YouTube review so more people can enjoy the show. And don't forget to subscribe so that you get the notifications when I go live, well, every week around 2 p.m. So see you in the next episode. See you next week. Bye.